And the reason I get emails from the content on this channel is because in the about section of this channel, I listed my email address. Where it says like contact, there is a section there where you can contact the author of the channel or whatever. And there is an email there, neosyndic@yahoo.com, And I say it because you can access it. It's there, So people, email me, right? And I get my share. I get a lot of email agreeing with me. 2/3 of the emails are from ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who agree with me. And 1/3 of the emails are regarding political issues. And, most of those are against, right? And that's fine. That's fine. I can handle it. I can handle political criticism, I don't care. A few of them have been objections from evangelicals or people, whatever, that are, opposed to the theological positions that I take. Especially like when I say, one of the positions I've taken publicly is that the Bible does not specifically, prohibit fellatio. That has generated a lot of reactions from certain actors who are evangelicals. And they have, written me emails, saying that I'm wrong. Somebody said that I'm going to hell, whatever, it's fine. So that's about 1/3 of those emails. Now, there is a small percentage of these objection emails, as I call them, or opposition emails, who are, extremely hostile and include, insults in caps or like profanity, and I'm not gonna react to those, even though, if you wanna fire off an email with profanity against me, go ahead, knock yourself out. It would be better if you tell me why you disagree with me rather than just fire a profanity at me. Firing a profanity at me is not gonna really tell me what you object to that I've said, But again, in this channel, I respect Article 19 of the Declaration of Human Rights, and you can express yourself whichever way you want. There is no cancel culture here. So I don't do the cancel culture. So I believe in free speech. As defined by the First Amendment of the American Constitution, free speech. That's the free speech standard I go by. And Article 19 of the Declaration of Human Rights of the United Nations. The European Convention on Human Rights says it grants free speech, but then it has like fine print in there that says that the state has the right to restrict that. So the European Convention of Human Rights is not a real human rights document, because it restricts the exercise of rights. It grants the state the right to restrict the exercise of the rights. So it's not real. In the European Convention of Human Rights are subordinate to the state, whereas in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the United Nations, or in the American Bill of Rights, the state is subordinate to the right in question. So that's the difference. In Europe, rights are subordinate to the permission of the state, whereas in the United States or in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the state is subordinate to the formulation of the right, which is, so that's why I go by the American First Amendment. And Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Like I said in the video where I talk about my mode of survival, I use a human-powered vehicle because I want to reduce my carbon footprint, and I don't want to pay bus fare because I don't want to be held hostage by the bus company, because I believe the buses are the bus fare in this town is basically a system of extortion, because the bus company has a monopoly, so they take advantage, and they keep increasing fares and increasing fares. And now that there is this inflation, they're increasing the fare because the gas prices went up, so the fare went up. I'm not gonna be held hostage to that. So that's what I use for transportation. And as far as my diet, my diet is iron rice bowl is what I call it. My version of the iron rice bowl. I eat, rice, potatoes, carrots, fruit, and occasionally fish. That's basically my diet. So my diet is radically, simplified in order to make it as inexpensive as possible in order to offset inflation. So, my diet is, inflation proof. My mode of transportation is inflation proof and reduces my carbon footprint, and I'm functionally vegetarian because the only meat I eat is occasionally fish. I've done all sorts of work. I've worked my formal training was in marketing and sales back when I lived in Amsterdam. But I've done, carpentry and upholstery, gardening work, clipping grass. I've done, janitorial work. And by janitorial work, I mean janitor in the English meaning of the word, because in Swedish, janitor means custodian. I mean janitor in the American sense of the term, which means cleaning. Stadsarbetare, right? Cleaning worker. And I've also done work as an English tutor. Since 2011, I've been working as an English tutor, now pro bono. Originally I made money out of it, but now pro bono, because I want to help, young immigrants who come to Sweden and they don't know English. They learn Swedish, but they don't know, the Swedish integration system is racist. So they force the immigrants to learn Swedish, but they don't teach them English or German, Swedish is not a lingua franca of business. If you want to make it in the European Union economy, you need English and German, not Swedish. Swedish is a parochial language that only a few people speak in relative terms. And just so that we're clear, jag kan tala det svenska, jag kan läsa det svenska, jag kan förstå det svenska. I can do that years ago. Utan SFI. So I didn't need SFI. So just so that we're clear, yeah. Okay. Another objection that I've heard that was mailed to me, and this is about in one of the videos in which I discussed the Good News from God brochure by Jehovah's Witnesses. I discuss, the issue of that, I am a preterist, and that I, believe that, my version of preterism is that Armageddon already happened during World War II, and that Hitler was the Antichrist, and that the Nazi movement was the anti-Christian movement in this. Just like the Jesus movement was the Christian movement, the Nazi movement is the Antichrist movement, right? That's what the argument that I made. A Jewish person wrote back to me that I am giving Hitler too much credit, okay, by elevating him to the status of the Antichrist. I can understand why, I can understand why somebody would say that, but I've yet to see another example of a political movement and a regime that what Hitler did was not just a pogrom like it happened in Russia or during, and granted during the Black Death, the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church didn't officially say it, but during the Black Death, one of the arguments that was put out was that the reason for the plague was toleration of Jews. So that many Jews were rounded up and burnt, during the Black Death. Okay, that's, a pogrom. In Russia, there were many pogroms against Jews too, and in Eastern Europe. But what Hitler did and the Nazi Party did was, they didn't just round up the Jews. They murdered them in an industrial scale. They set up an industrial system designed to exterminate Jews in the form of gas chambers. They set up a slave labor economy. The Nazi Party, systematized and industrialized the extermination of Jews. It wasn't just a pogrom. They took it to the next level. So that's why I say that Hitler was the Antichrist. I just don't see it. I cannot, the agenda of the Antichrist is the elimination of the people of God. And he did that. The Jews were the original people of God. I would say the Christians, the restorationist Christians, and Christians, you know, the good, well, not all, well, whatever. Let's say that the Christians and, you know, are the Christians and the Muslims, the Mormons are the, you know, the people of God now too. But the original people of God were, you know, the Jews, and Hitler sought to exterminate them and organize their extermination in an industrial scale, you know. And again, I want to reemphasize, I am a radical opponent of Holocaust denial. I believe that the numbers are underestimated. I believe that the figure that Hitler killed 6 to 8 million is an underestimate. I think it was more. And that is because at the end of the war, the Nazis destroyed evidence. The Nazis destroyed bodies, they destroyed records, they destroyed evidence, you know, about the real figures for the Holocaust. So you have to factor that in. You have to factor, whenever you make an estimate for the numbers of victims of the Holocaust, Jewish victims and other victims of the Holocaust, you have to factor in the fact that at the end of the war, the Germans, excuse me, not the Germans. Not all Germans were Nazis, because there was the White Rose and the German resistance. Excuse me. The Nazis destroyed evidence on a systematic scale, you know, during the end of the war, in the final months of the war, and between, you know, after Watch on the Rhine petered out, after it became obvious that the counteroffensive in the Ardennes failed, you know, around, you know, realization set in around, you know, late February, you know, 1945, between late February 1945 and the surrender on May 8th, 1945, during that time period, the Nazis engaged in a systematic campaign of destruction of evidence. Okay, and that has to be factored in. You can't ignore that, because then that means that the numbers that we think of the Holocaust are actually less than what actually happened. So, and yeah, it is unscientific, and they're going to say, oh, well, that's unscientific. You cannot do that, because then you would be speculating about the number. Yeah, but okay, then what they need to do is, when they say, okay, if they say 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust, then you need to add a disclaimer there. But the fact is that the Nazis destroyed evidence, so the number could be higher. Maybe. Okay? But that's just my viewpoint. Okay, so that's that objection. My experiences in the immigrant detention in Sweden, right? And this is an issue that came up. You know, when I was in detention the first time, there was a Tibetan in there. A Tibetan. And the Sweden denied him asylum and was going to send him back to China. You know, and in China, of course, I mean, Tibetans in Tibet are, you know, they're under occupation, they're oppressed. I mean, and there's arguments to be made, you know, before, you know, China annexed Tibet, you know, the Tibetan peasantry was exploited by the Lama, you know, feudal ruling class. The Lamas were parasites, perhaps, you know, Asiatic mode of production and all that. You know, a bureaucracy presiding over the super exploitation of a peasantry. Perhaps that is correct. However, what the Chinese are doing in Tibet, you know, is not the right way to correct that problem. Okay, they've engaged in an occupation there where they seek to erase the Tibetan culture. So, you know, last year, I was in contact with a Tibetan refugee that lives in a town in northern India called Itangar, I think, Itangar. It's like an enclave where there is a community of Tibetan refugees who live in India. And he was a young man, only 21. I met him on a gay app, you know, and we became friends. And we had a chat, and we had a dialogue on WhatsApp. And in that dialogue, you know, he's the one who taught me about Buddhism. You know, he basically taught me about Tibetan Buddhism. This is just a kid, just a boy, 20 years old, you know, 21 years old. And he taught me about Tibetan Buddhism. You know, the whole concept of suffering, the whole concept of, we discussed Naraka, you know, the Buddhist hells. You know, in Buddhism, hell is temporary and all these things. He's the one who told me about Professor Graham Priest, whose series of lectures, Buddhism and Science, are part of this channel. There's a playlist where you can access those lectures, and please, I recommend that you look at them. It was this young man who told me about Professor Graham Priest, because we got into the discussion because, I still had the Jehovah's Witness mentality, and, he pointed out to me that in Buddhism, there is not just that the idea that there's only one truth is really an Abrahamic idea, right? A Western idea that comes from an Abrahamic background, that there is only one truth. Muslims, Christians, and Jews assume that there is only one religious truth. In Buddhism, it doesn't work that way. In Buddhism, you can believe different things at the same time. So, for example, he was telling me that in his enclave there are several sects of Tibetan Buddhism, and that most people believe in all of them, or pay attention to all of them at the same time. So in Buddhism, you can believe in different religions at the same time. And also, Buddhism is atheist. In Buddhism, there is no God. That's another thing. So a religion need not a God, and Buddhism proves that. And Professor Graham Priest also points this out. So, the idea that there is only one truth, as Jehovah's Witnesses say that they are the truth. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that they are the truth, that their belief system is the truth. Okay, that idea is derived from Western values, right? It's not necessarily the case, right? That is a Western idea. There's only one truth. It's a Western idea. So Jehovah's Witnesses are premising their claim to be the truth upon a Western cultural paradigm that doesn't apply in Asiatic cultures. So, whatever, So yeah, I subscribe to the idea that you can believe. That is why I embrace paradox. After interacting with this Tibetan Buddhist young man, that is what I realized. I embrace paradox. I can be Marxist and anarcho-capitalist at the same time, and that's fine. I know the Marxists and the anarcho-capitalists would say no, because Marxists and anarcho-capitalists, because they're Western, believe that there's only one political truth. See, that's the thing. In the same way that Jehovah's Witnesses believe that there's only, or Catholics, or Mormons too, everybody in the West believes that there's only one religious truth, one political truth. I don't agree with that. I rather agree with the Tibetan Buddhist young man who showed me that that is not the case necessarily, And that is why in that video, when I made a video of my altar, you see in my altar, I have a little statue of Buddha, That's there for a reason. So, yeah. So anyways, the idea that there's only one truth is a Western idea that does not apply in Buddhism or in Buddhist societies. Where he lives in Ithankar, the Buddhist community there, they follow different sects of Tibetan Buddhism at the same time. And that does not mean that I don't, I am organized with the far left. That does not mean that I reject Marxism or whatever. That's not what I'm doing, I am organized with the far left, and I am committed to, the Marxist viewpoint and what have you, or the anarchist viewpoint or what have you. But I also look at radical ecology, Extinction Rebellion, and I am organized with the Swedish far left, but I look at also at Extinction Rebellion, and I pay attention to what the anarcho-capitalists have to say. That doesn't mean that I'm disloyal to the Swedish far left or Marxism. It just means that I am informed about viewpoints other than Marxism that are also, critical of the Swedish system, or the Western system, because the Western Empire, I believe the Western Empire is doomed. I don't think this Western Empire has a long-term future, because the political economy of the Western Empire is long-term unsustainable. A system based on credit and inflation is not going to last forever. It doesn't have a future, because it's based in a system based on fiat currency, inflation, credit, where you have systematic wealth confiscation in the form of taxation, and on top of that, you have interest. That system is not long-term sustainable. It's not going to work. It's going to fall apart. It's doomed. The Western economy is doomed. And then on top of that, there is the problem of climate change. nothing is being done to mitigate the effect of climate change. And climate change is going to have consequences. You know, I mean, Extinction Rebellion is trying to sound the alarm, but nothing is being done. You know, Fridays for Future sounded the alarm. Greta sounded the alarm, but nothing was done. Nothing is being done. So that is going to have consequences. So between climate change and the inherent unsustainability of the Western political economy, the Western empire is doomed, Sweden included. You know, that's what I believe. So anyways,